Hello everyone and welcome back to another Batman Miniature Game 3rd Edition Battle Report. I was going to give Sora a cameo, but she just walked away. So today for you we have 350 rep of Mr. Freeze, again the same list as last time. This time going up against 350 rep of the Birds of Prey, largely featuring plants, because didn't buy the new box of Prey starter set. So we're going to, it's also a list specifically that I just used in the tabletop simulator of this, versus the Big Bang Theory, and I don't know if any of you have ever played against the Big Bang Theory crew that's available for this game. It's no fun to play, and it's no fun to play against, let's just put it that way. Anyway, with that, let's get things started. So here is the Mr. Freeze crew from last time, but we'll just quickly cover it in case you didn't see that, or just want reminded. They're using a neutral deck, unfortunately, so that does limit somewhat the cards they'll be able to score, which is a detriment, but hey, at least we're getting to see a crew we haven't seen much. As I remove it here. So it's being led by the Arkham City Mr. Freeze. His sidekick is Captain Cold. They have a free agent, Killer Frost. So don't worry about that, that is paint. I was painting an orc. We have high security henchmen, and then we have, let's see, that's Icy with the stick, but it's being classed as a shovel. And then Freezy, and I am cheating, I'm looking at the cards. And Coldy at the end there. Let's see if I can keep that consistent this time when I'm remembering their names as we play. That's everything, no upgrades or anything like that, and with that let's look at the Birds of Prey. So not as many miniatures in the Birds of Prey crew, and of course the plants will not be deploying at the start of the game. Instead, each of them give a free suspect marker that we place down during deployment that we'll cover when we get there. There are also some upgrades, some of them more pricey than they should be. The new Poison Ivy is leading the crew, and she's taking modified pheromones, so when she tries to do her hypnotize control pheromones, it lets her target 2 people instead of 1. Then we have Katana, the new Katana for 3rd edition. We have her favourite plant, Frank, the Destroyer, and he has the Ancient Plants upgrade, which makes him large, it makes him have tough skin, +1 to his basic stats except HP, which gives him extra 4. Then we have, it's the old Harley Quinn model. It is going to use this Harley Quinn's card, however, the objective card for the new Birds of Prey Harley has been included in the deck. Technically, you shouldn't be able to do that. We're just yada-yadaing it so it's allowed because it's the better of the 2 cards for her, I think. Then we've also got the plants from the new releases for 3rd edition as well. This is Plant 1 and Plant 2. And that is it. So here we are at deployment, just again the 8 inches in from each side, just because it's less hassle, and some of the other deployment types are a little unfair depending on your crew setup, in my opinion. So the Mr. Freeze crew is on your left, and then the Birds of Prey are on your right. Birds of Prey 1 initiative, so they will be going first. And as you can see, the 3 free suspect markers for the plants have been placed. The bare minimum closeness they can be together, they're just outside 4 together there in a diagonal in the line. Then we have Harley there. Then we have Katana and Poison Ivy right next to each other. They have Audacity, and you are able to give Audacity to a plant who is not on the table yet, and that is what has happened. Everyone else is basically in a line for the Freeze crew, except High Security Henchman, who is hidden, but he just used it to get ever so slightly further forwards, because I think he's probably a little bit gun shy from last time when he tried to charge in and then spent the entire game getting knocked out over and over and feeding points to the other team. There is no objective cards being played in Phase 1 or Phase 2, so we are ready to just jump in and get started. So Harley Quinn got the game started, and she did a very synergistic play. She moved up to the Surge Ring, had more than enough movement to cover because this Harley Quinn is the one that's super duper fast. Then she played as a resource, Emancipation, which is, again, as said at the top, this is technically for the Harley Quinn from the Birds of Prey box. Nuts to getting that. It's going to count for her because she's Harley Quinn, even though she's not Harley Quinn free agent. She's Harley Quinn's sidekick for the Gotham City Sirens, I think. Either way, it's getting counted, but it's only being used as a resource. But it was still pretty effective. During a friendly Harley Quinn model's activation, target a friendly suspect marker within 8. Center an explosive. On it, roll 2d6. Pick a direction. It moves in that direction. Anyone under the template suffers blood stun. Then remove the template. Doesn't say remove the suspect marker, which was also important. She picked that one. It moved 5, and she picked that direction. It went here and hit these 2 henchmen for freeze for blood stun each. They don't get to dodge as far as I can tell because of the rules of the card. And that in turn has scored a pretty birds. Oh, if you don't know how the Birds of Prey cards work, if at any time the bold text happens to your crew, you can play 1 card face up, and then the secondary, easier way to score the card comes into play. But in this case, Two enemy models suffered damage from the same attack by a model they could not see at the beginning of the attacker's activation. They couldn't see Harley Quinn at the start of her turn. They still can't see her because of this being too tall, and that presumably counts as an attack. Well, actually it doesn't even say an attack, it just says they suffer damage. So great synergy there. Freezy, which is the uninjured of Mr. Freeze's thematic henchman, activated without audacity but close enough to get an inspired manipulate. He moved forwards his 8 behind the Batmobile in the tree there and put down a suspect marker. Also, Disturbance was played as a resource for free. During a friendly model's activation, target a sewer marker. It can't be used this round. The sewer grating that Poison Ivy started next to cannot be used this round by either side. The lady with the soul-stealing sword activated next, Katana, and you might notice that Frank has appeared. During a friendly Birds of Prey model's turn, you can exchange a suspect marker in play for a plant. Now you might notice the middle suspect marker is still there. That's because for Katana's turn all she did was move and then replace it because it was gone thanks to summoning Frank. Prior to moving and doing that though, she did also play a I Work Best Alone, so you place this card behind her card, and then every time you place a suspect marker with that model, which she has, you pick a number, put it on the card. At the end of the turn you roll a die. If it matches any of the numbers on this card, you score with 2 victory points and it goes in the scored pile. And again, if she keeps placing suspect markers, she can keep on putting numeric values on this card, so your chances improve to land it. So, order of operations: she activated, Frank was summoned, that got removed, this got played, she moved, she placed it right back. Killer Frost was the next activate, and totally forgot to cover that both Killer Frost, well actually there's 3 models. 3 models have adaptability: Killer Frost, Katana and Poison Ivy. They all chose extra movement for Battle Round 1. We'll try and remember to mention it in the setup for following turns. She activated with Audacity, she moves her 10 inches or 11 with Acrobat plus the extra 2 from adaptability. More than enough to get her to where she wanted to be. She then just put down a suspect marker, didn't do anything else. Frank activated next, and during his activation the suspect marker that was there has turned into plant number 2, which is a ranged plant and does have Audacity. Frank didn't know, so all he could do was initiate an attack on the henchman that hadn't been wounded, whose name is Totally Freezy, I think. Yes, Freezy. Both of them exerted 2 efforts, so those countered each other out. Frank attacked, all said and done, did 2 hits for 1 blood each, but more importantly, he is devoured. So on his future attempts to get a turn, he has to try and get free of Frank, and if he fails he gets 2 blood. If Frank goes down, he'll just get spat back out, and if he passes the endurance roll, he'll get spat back out as well. But he is off the table for now. Icy activated without Audacity, but close enough to his boss for a free inspired manipulate. He moved up to the bench there and he placed a suspect marker that is just outside of 4 of that one, so it is a legal place, and then he did nothing else. Pamela Eisley, otherwise known as Poison Ivy, was up next, and remember, although she is normally 8 inches movement, her adaptability this turn gave her 2 extra. She went like an L shape, roughly there. She placed a suspect marker down there, and then she used green web to be moved from one part of a plant's action zone, and the normal plants are 4 inches. Frank thinks his upgrade is a 6-inch bubble for attacking and such. So she moved, she didn't go full distance, she just decided to get moved so that she's a bit further forwards and is hiding behind that tree. Now she is scientific, so she could technically do another special action, but there is nothing worth doing. She could force a plant to attack, but there's no one in view. She can't try hypnotize because no one's in view, etc. Cody was the next henchman to activate, who was there without Audacity, but still again within range for the Inspire Manipulate. Walked forwards, out of 2 away from the deployment line, and put down a suspect marker. So both sides now have 4, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, yeah, 4 each. Mutated Plant 1 activated, which is the purple one there, which is totally the wrong one to have been given Audacity, incidentally. Should definitely... Sorry, he's Plant 2. Plant 1 should have been the one given Audacity, who isn't on the table yet. Mistake was made, having to live with it. But it is a ranged plant, medium range, although even without that, the henchman that just finished moving here was well within to be seen, within the 12 before the night roll kicks in. Shot at him and did 3 blood, 3 stun. Now amazingly, even though he already had 1 blood on him, 4 blood isn't enough to kill him. The freeze henchmen are tanky, but the 3 stun damage plus the one he had, they're low willpower, 4 willpower, so he is knocked out, and he'll have to do a wake up check at the end of the turn, but he is alive, so there is that, and it didn't score any cards. So because the other plant isn't on the table and now cannot get the opportunity because it didn't get spawned by during that activation, It's just over to Mr. Freeze, Captain Cold, and High Security Henchman. High Security Henchman saw his moment. He peeled round the corner as fast as he could. He went to where you can see him, so he's obscured by the cover here. Although from Frank's normal attack that won't matter, because they just like stretch vines around corners and such. They don't need line of sight. But it might matter for Poison Ivy. He revealed the suspect marker that was there, and in doing so, scored a disturbance. One of these was played earlier as a resource, but this one is being scored. Reveal an enemy suspect marker. After revealing it, have more in play than your opponent. Mr. Freeze activated with Audacity. He moved up to here, then he used his expansive cold spray. And in the comments last time, there was apparently an answer to the dilemma of the template rule saying targets can still use dodge. But how can they use dodge to take away a die if an expansive weapon always gets to roll at least one die? The answer apparently is the strength die roll that it would normally be on mechanical, so 3+ in this case, it gets reduced to a normal die, so you're not just rolling against mechanical, firearm, beam, etc. You're rolling against the defense of the target, so you take a little bit of stun damage to worsen their chances of getting through. So that's what Katana did. Didn't make a difference, however. It hit both her and Frank. It does slow 2 because of cold, which for Frank's case we're not going to bother tracking because plants can't move, but in Katana's case we will keep it there. So she's got 2 off of her movement, and more importantly 2 blood to each of them. No crits though, so no freezing. So Captain Cold ended off the turn, and rather than joining in the fight, he chose to pursue the future points available, because it's not about who kills the most unless you have cards for that. He moved up to the sewer grating here. He used it to travel through the sewer system. Couldn't go to that one that was deactivated earlier, so he has popped up right here next to Harley Quinn, and that does take us to the recap for Battle Round 1. So at the end of Battle Round 1, everyone who is conscious with stun damage has healed 1 stun, so that's Frank, Katana, 2 of the henchmen for Mr. Freeze, and the henchman who was knocked out did not wake up, so he is not getting a turn. The one that is currently consumed inside Frank will attempt to get a turn at some point if Frank doesn't go down prior to that. And there is 1 end of turn card being played by the Mr. Freeze crew, a classic. When you're stuck with a neutral deck, stick to the plan. You must have more suspect markers in play and in focus than your opponent. There we go, close enough. Which they do, because it's 1, 2, 3 versus 4. There's a 4th one. Where is it? 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3. Wait, wasn't there a 4th? Am I confused? Oh, there, by the tree. 1, 2, 3, 4 versus 1, 2, 3. There we are. I knew there was enough. I just couldn't remember where it was. It was hidden by the tree when I looked down. I couldn't see it. So that does take us to Battle Round 2. So at the top of Battle Round 2, it will be the Birds of Prey getting first activation again. And we'll take a look at Audacity in a minute. However, during High Security Henchman's turn in turn 1, when he revealed a suspect marker, it should have triggered the bold text on this card once it gets into focus. An enemy model reveals one of your suspect markers, which means this becomes the secondary, easier to score. A friendly model reveals an enemy suspect marker, and you have more in play than your opponent after that. Doesn't score, doesn't change the scoring at all, but the Birds of Prey are allowed 1 card in play that's face up on the table that now has an easier scoring condition, but obviously the opponent knows what the scoring condition is and can go out of their way to stop it. Birds of Prey getting first turn definitely helps matters. Killer Frost has Audacity, he does not, Harley does, Captain Cold does, High Security Henchman does, he's knocked out, so obviously not. Katana and Poison Ivy do, so does the plant that's not on the table yet, and then so does Mr. Freeze, and we've got to try and remember that Frank is currently chewing on one of the henchmen. So Harley Quinn got the second round started. She sped past all the enemies through the trees, over right behind this henchman, and put down a suspect marker using a manipulate. However, that was as a result of her unpredictable rule, which lets her spend her special action as any other type of action and allows her to do 2 of the same. So yes, she has done a tactical action and put down a suspect marker within 4, which in turn has scored in position, the harder part of in position, a friendly model when it's in focus. Come on now, close enough. A friendly model places a suspect marker within 4 inches of an enemy model, and you already have at least 3 in play, which they do, so it's scored for 2. But she could do another tactical action because she spent her special, so she used her once per game guns to shoot Snowy. Is it Snowy? No, it's Icy. To shoot Icy in the back, and she did 4 blood with them, obviously losing 2 dice because she moved, and he had 1 blood on him, putting him at 5. He's not dead. He is very tanky for a henchman. He has 7 HP, so he is alive on 1. Sorry, he has 2 HP left, not 1. I am incapable of learning how to count, apparently. Also, forgot to mention adaptability. Killer Frost picked attack, Katana picked defense, expecting to have to dodge Mr. Freeze again, and Poison Ivy also picked defense. Mr. Freeze activated, and although he ended up back here, he stayed where he was first of all, and for a special action did Ice Flash on Katana. She has to do an endurance roll, otherwise suffer the cold effect. She passed it, but even if you pass it, you still get -1 to your defense, so that countered her upping it with adaptability, and another -2 on her move, so she's slow 4 currently. Then he did his expansive wave blast again. Actually, does it have reload? It does not have reload. He only has 3 ammo for it, but still. So he did do it. He just needed a 3+ mechanical and the strength die for Frank and whiffed. Katana dodged again to make it a normal strength die, so it was going against her defensive 4 because he countered her buffing it, and he still managed to whiff. Bad roll. So all said and done, he made Katana's movement worse and did 1 stun. So then afterwards he retreated outside of the 6-inch AoE that Frank has. Katana activated with Audacity, but obviously limiting her movement technically by 3, not 4, because she's an acrobat, so she gets +1 from that. It gave her enough to come around the corner here, get into base to base with Captain Cold to try and take him out. He exerted all 3 effort. She only exerted 2 because she's doing double blood with her Katana. And as you can see, there's no blood damage. He managed to block everything that she had coming against him, and that was despite also using Precise Blow. She had 1 die gone because he exerted more effort. Even with Precise Blow, which is +1 to strength die rolls, +1 to attack rolls, nothing got through. And with the 2 blood she's already got on her, she's only got 6 endurance. Like, this Katana, I don't understand why she costs as much as she does. She doesn't seem that good to me. But oh well, back over to the Mr. Freeze crew. So from amongst the trees that she blended in too well with at the end of Battle Round 1, Killer Frost activated 10+1, 11 movement, because she is an acrobat, plus the extra distance of actually putting down the marker itself, allowed her to score a quick Stake Your Claim for placing a suspect marker within the enemy deployment zone. Only 1 point, but hey, she went after points and that matters, especially when you're using the neutral deck. So Poison Ivy activated and she had a busy turn, which did involve starting with summoning the plant with Audacity, so that suspect marker that had been down there got removed, making less and less likely that this face-up card's ever going to get scored, but it stays in place, so it doesn't really matter. So first of all, she's scientific, so she can do 2 special actions a turn. Her first was Green Web, to be moved from where she was to be placed within Frank's 6 inches, so comfortably right there. She then did Control Pheromones on High Security Henchman. Mr. Freeze is immune to Hypnotize, and this guy was knocked out, so even though she could target 2 people, there was only 1 viable target. He failed his willpower roll, so she gets to do 2 actions with him, moved him into base to base with Captain Cold, and showed Katana how it's done with his combo knives and the effort limit being reached on Captain Cold, that is. He slashed and slashed and slashed like Victor Zaz and did 4 blood and a knockdown from getting a crit. Now, High Security Henchman will still get a turn, Captain Cold still gets a turn because he's not dead yet, but he is heavily damaged. Then for her actual tactical action, because that was 2 special actions, she did her Spore attack. I think it's called Spores. It's an explosive acid poison burst, which she did on this unconscious guy. Only did 1 blood. It would also have poisoned him, but because he's knocked out, it does +1 bonus blood damage. And I think actually just the 1 blood was enough. He is dead. Didn't score anything, but he is removed. So that threw a spanner into the works for what Captain Cold was going to do, given that he had to suffer impaired movement to stand up. So he retreated to the bus stand there, which was the best he could manage. Then he fired the cold gun at Katana. She exerted effort to dodge, and he whiffed. So no damage, just the stun there. And now it's over to either any of the plants, actually. Yeah, just the plants left. We're still over here because Mutated Plant 1 activated with Audacity. For his special action he did Shockwave, so enemy models within 4 suffer slow 2, which is just High Security Henchman. Captain Cold made sure he was outside of the 4 bubble for his actions, which also meant he couldn't attack him because he's only got close range rather. So he attacked High Security Henchman. High Security Henchman was willing to take the damage, potential blood from each hit and poison, and nothing got through his defense. So thanks to that slow 2, High Security Henchman's plans were also scuppered there, so he moved into base to base with the Mutated Plant. He attacked with his blood combo knives, did 6 blood, which is more than enough to remove him, and as a result actually did manage to score a quick 1 victory point for Dirty Job, making enemy model KO or a casualty, which it did, although plants keep coming back. If another suspect marker is available, they can absorb it to respawn. So we can actually cover the next two activations real quick because they couldn't do anything. The other Mutated Plant 2, activated without Audacity. There is no one in range that he can see because of this little outcrop. Bad placement, honestly. So this little outcrop is blocking Captain Cold and the high security henchman. So he couldn't do anything, so he just activated, did nothing. Then the heavily wounded Icy down here, without Audacity, not close enough for him to manipulate, so he just moved forwards, kind of halfway between Katana and Harley Quinn. Now it's over to Frank. Frank has nobody to hit and can't move, and then that means the last activation for the turn is the henchman inside of Frank that's being devoured. So we might as well, let's just roll his endurance. It's an endurance roll, I think. That means he passed, so I'll need to double check if he gets an activation. So he does indeed carry on with his activation. It just says he is placed within 2, which presumably means he doesn't count as moving either. So he fired his ice template, Ice Beam at Frank for revenge, got 1 hit through for 2 blood, 1 stun. And that does take us to the end of the round. And yeah, we don't have a KO check to do anymore because he's unconscious. However, we do have to see if there's any objective cards being played. So at the end of battle round 2, everyone who's conscious has healed 1 stun. Of course, there's no longer a knockout check, as I said. And everybody is good to go. There is a card being played, and also there should have been a card played earlier. Doesn't affect the scoring, but when High Security Henchman took out that plant, it triggered Katakiuchi, which is Katana's unique card. When an enemy model removes one of yours as a casualty, target that model and play this card. Choose a friendly model. If that one removes him, score the card. So Katana is going to be marked. I don't think she's going to be able to do it, because High Security Henchman has 8 endurance and is very tough, and she's very lackluster when it comes to fighting, in my opinion. But it gets the card out of the hand, cycles another one in, and also for Mr. Freeze, stick to the plan for having more suspect markers again, which they have in spades. 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm still probably, 5, and then there's only 3, or 2. 2, I think. Yeah, 2 maybe. Oh wait, sorry, no, Harley played 1, so it is 3 in play for the Birds of Prey. So at the top of the penultimate bat round, it will be once again the Birds of Prey getting first activation. They're doing really well on those initiative rolls. 1 card is also being played for the Birds of Prey. Classic, it's a diehard. Pick a miniature if it lives till end of turn and it isn't your boss. Score the card for 2. It's being played on that plant. That one right there. Let's see if they go get it, because Katana, she's already probably got a death sentence, but that might ease off some of the pressure on her if it's someone else. Plus, they're getting first activation. So you can see who's got Audacity. Basically, everyone except the Freeze Henchman, in fact, I think literally, and the plants. The plant who is not on the table anymore also has Audacity. So perhaps expectantly, Katana got the turn started. She moved into base to base with High Security Henchman. He exerted 3 effort because she's doing double blood. She could only really afford to do 2. All said and done, she got only 2 hits through for 4 blood in total, which is half his HP. So he lived. It is not looking good for her as we go into Mr. Freeze's first activation. High Security Henchman decided to return the favour by activating and attacking Katana. All said and done, she did much better with her defense rolls this time. Only 2 blood got through for 2 of the hits, and combo was remembered. But he also got a crit, because one of those was a strength die, so she is knocked over. Not knocked out, just knocked over. She has 2 health left. And then he retreated over there, but that triggered as a bold text effect. An opponent has more models inside your deployment zone than you do, so that is replacing this card in play that's getting discarded now, and this is the face-up card, and the rule for it becomes you have 1 or more models inside enemy deployment at the recount phase. So as long as this is true, this will score for a massive 3 victory points at the end of the turn. So Poison Ivy activated and first of all used her pollination rule, which says when she puts down a suspect marker, it may be placed completely within the action radius of a plant, which in Frank's case is 6. So it was placed on top of the Batmobile right there, which puts 3 suspect markers within 4 of Frank, 1 of which, or 2 of which, are within distance to an enemy because he's still standing there, which scores the pretty hard to Regrowth, the card, Poison Ivy's unique, have at least 3 suspect markers within 4 of the active friendly model. Oh no, it's active friendly model. So although she made Frank place it, it can't score until Frank activates. And at least 1 of them is within 4 of an enemy model. Well, either way, this is still going to score, because even if he is moved, that is within 4 of Mr. Freeze. And if Mr. Freeze moves and removes that, well actually if he moves and removes that, Frank can't place it because he's too close, but that would also eat up his turn. Well, unfortunately I didn't notice that it said of the active friendly, so we'll just have to put that face up on the table, and if Mr. Freeze decides to make it impossible to score, that's good enough. Poison Ivy then also moved so that she's within their deployment zone and base to base with Mr. Freeze to stop him easily firing. So this henchman here activated, and the reason for that was, even if Mr. Freeze had removed this, plants can place suspect markers within their action zone, so Frank could have just used a manipulate to place it and it still would happen. So the only way of stopping the regrowth scoring as we go into Frank's turn next for sure is if he had killed him. He only got one hit through. If the other had gotten through, he would have done it, but thanks to the upgrade giving him, oh actually because of tough skin, I believe that negates, or large, one of the two I think negates the stun damage, so that shouldn't be there, but either way, the blood, that puts him on 6 blood total, but the Ancient Plants upgrade gives him 9 HP in total. So he's lived. We are activating Frank next. I'm just going to say the regrowth is scored, but he still obviously gets a turn. So Frank activated, regrowth scored rather, for the criteria we already discussed, and then because it just says during a friendly model's activation, so presumably this is fine, that marker was eaten up by this plant respawning, and he does have Audacity. Frank attacked the Freezy that attacked him with his attacks just to try and devour him again. He efforted 3 times knowing that Frank couldn't because of how wounded he is, but one hit still got through for 1 blood, and that does mean that once again he is being chewed on for the next little while. Captain Cold activated with the hopes of finally just removing the problem in the form of Katana, and he shot at her. I'd actually just realised because she's on the ground she's -1 defense, so he did actually kill her. What I thought happened, he fired his full power cold beam, which means it's got aim, so he can't move rather. It becomes a rate of fire 1, so you're just rolling 1 die plus a strength die, but it's a beam, and that means a 2+. He rolled a 1, so that missed automatically, and then the other die was going against her defense, which I thought was 4. Forgot, when on the ground, I'm pretty sure she's -1 to defense, unless it's, yeah, because it's knocked out, you're not allowed to roll defense rolls. So, and he's a ranged master, which means he's +1 to ranged rolls. His normal die roll was a 2, so +1 from him being a ranged master is 3, and her defense went down to 3, so he did actually hit her, and did, how much does his full power beam do? 2 blood, 1 stun, yeah, that is enough to kill her, so he actually did manage to remove Katana. Glad I spotted that, because that might matter in the long run, because that means that this doesn't score, and that means that this also cannot score. Double check to make sure that was right, and yes, knockdown models do have -1. And then just so that we're clear, it also means that the I Work Best Alone that Katana had on her card did not score. It was remembered to being rolled for, but never came up the number that was on the card, so that didn't score anyway. Also forgot to mention, Captain Cold did use his special action to order, and told him to put down a suspect marker. Mutated Plant 1 on top of the Batmobile there, activated with Audacity. Mr. Freeze is just outside of his 4-inch AoE, so for a manipulate he put down a suspect marker within his 4 inches, right down there next to an enemy one, and couldn't do anything else. Over the side of the table, Killer Frost activated. She ran over here, put down a suspect marker. That is the 7th suspect marker in play for Mr. Freeze, so he can only have 1 more, but that did score for another easy 1 point. Place a suspect marker within the enemy deployment zone. Stake your claim. It has indeed scored. Super simple activation for Harley Quinn next. With Audacity, she sprinted across here behind Poison Ivy, put down a suspect marker, and in doing so closely to Mr. Freeze, scored an in position without needing the bold text. A friendly model places a suspect marker within 4 of an enemy model, and you already have at least 3 in play. That is suspect marker number 4. Mr. Freeze activated, he ran away from Poison Ivy. He did an Ice Flash on the plant up there, which did pass its endurance roll amazingly, but again, still takes -1 to its defense and slow 2. He then shot his expansive wave at it. It did 2 damage, and he'd already inflicted a status effect, but that technically should be a 4, but the plants can't move, so it doesn't matter. What does matter is I'm Feeling Weird has scored for inflicting an effect on an enemy model, so he did something that was worth 2, making it worthwhile. So now it's over to either, oh, the shooting plant that's, oh wait, no, the shooting plant was the diehard this turn, not Katana. It's totally still in play. Oh no, that's bad for Mr. Freeze. So the plant there activated. He has medium range, more than enough to shoot at Mr. Freeze, who obviously is very tough. One hit got through for 1 blood, 1 stun with his caustic attack. Didn't score anything, just did a little bit of damage, and that does mean that the last person to activate is him. He will have a free manipulate because of Mr. Freeze being there. Don't know if he wants to put down a marker, so that might just be the end of a turn, and I apologise totally for forgetting that the Die Hard was on the silly plant over there and not on Katana. Hasn't affected anything because Mr. Freeze couldn't get over to him and one-shot him anyway, and Killer Frost would have done what she did because it scored the same victory points anyway to counter it, so I don't think it makes a difference, but it was an oversight. So we are just going to jump straight to the end of Battle Round 3. The henchman without Audacity did not, well he couldn't because of where he was, didn't want to use the manipulate for anything, so he just moved slightly there. So again, that takes us into the situation we're in now, and another stick to the plan is being scored for Mr. Freeze's crew. I think that's in focus. So that's all of them now, I think, and that does mean that Regrowth for having at least 1 or more models inside the enemy deployment, Poison Ivy and Harley are there, and the Die Hard for the silly plant. Finally remembering that 2-point swing might make a difference, who knows. I know Killer Frost countered that there, but obviously we're getting the 3 on top of that. Who knows, but with that we're ready to go into the final round. Oh, and everybody who is conscious has healed 1 stun. So in Battle Round 4, the final turn, Mr. Freeze's crew finally gets to take a first activation. There is no Phase 1 or Phase 2 objective cards being played for either crew. Basically everyone has Audacity except the poor henchman and the henchman that's being devoured inside of Frank if he chooses to activate. If he can't break out for the end of a turn, he does count as being dead at the end of the game, in case that scores anything. And basically everyone else has Audacity except the shooting plant. And Mr. Freeze is out of ammo now, and I think maybe the shooting plant is as well. But either way, Mr. Freeze's crew is getting first turn. Killer Frost was first up. She activated, she moved around the car, she put down the 8th and final suspect marker that Mr. Freeze's crew is allowed unless one gets revealed. I think that might be the first time we've hit the 8th suspect marker cap, and in doing so scored, I think, the 3rd and final. Stake your claim for putting a suspect marker in the enemy deployment zone for a 1-point score. Oh, and in finishing the activation, the bold text on this card is the same. It's another nest, it's in play, so now as long as one of the Birds of Prey crew is still alive in the enemy deployment zone at the recount phase of the turn, that is 3 victory points waiting to score. So both sides are just desperately looking for any last minute ways to score. Harley Quinn activated, she moved up behind Mr. Freeze, put down a suspect marker and scored another imposition. Without the bold text being required, friendly model within 4 of an enemy puts the suspect marker down, and you already have at least 3, of which they have 4. 1, 2, 3, they had 5 prior to that. Mr. Freeze counterplayed, immediately activated, walked right up to the suspect marker that Harley Quinn just put down, revealed it, and in doing so scored a disturbance. Reveal an enemy suspect marker, and after doing so you must have more. They have 8. Poison Ivy activated and just made sure she's within the deployment of the enemy, and the I Work Best Alone is being played now. This should be put on her card. There's only 1 round in the game left, meaning that you only get 1 attempt at this, so we're just going to do it live now and then discard it if it doesn't work. So pick a number. It's going to be, let's go for 5, and we're going to roll a die, and if it's a 5 it scores. Oh, I was going to do a 4 as well. Oh well, so we're just going to immediately discard this because it won't score because this is the last round. The gentleman inside Frank activated to try and break free with an endurance roll and failed it, so he took 2 blood damage. He didn't die, he is still alive, but that does mean he's going to count as a casualty at the end of the game. And there doesn't appear to be any other way to score. The plants obviously can't move and they're surrounded by suspect markers, so this might just be the end of the game. We'll see in a second. So there is still a play. Captain Cold can shoot Frank from where he is, and that will score an objective card. So Frank activated, played his unique the Feed Me, but as a resource to force the model inside him to immediately do another slow digestion endurance roll. He passed it, so he gets spat out. And that does mean he and Captain Cold now get the chance to shoot Frank, and as long as one of them succeed in killing him, they'll score a card. Yeah, that is going to take us to the end of the game. This henchman activated, hit Frank for 2 blood, 1 stun, but the stun is negated. Not enough to kill him, so technically, yeah, that plant over there could activate to shoot him. There's no objective cards in Birds of Prey hand to score for getting a kill, so that's irrelevant. Captain Cold, he shot and did 2 blood with a single hit that got through with the very last of ammo. So that means that Frank does disappear and the card is out of reach, but that does mean the final score of the game for Mr. Freeze's crew is 1 victory point for a dirty job for making a model a casualty. And that does also mean that we're at the end of the game. Poison Ivy's in their deployment zone. The bold text is in effect, so the nest has scored for 3, and now we're ready to see who has won. So there's definitely less cards in the Birds of Prey victory deck here, but their cards are worth more. So I'm actually curious who's won. Let's see. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we'll see if that matters. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18, 19. Plays 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So I'm glad I remember that Die Hard, because that would have been 18, 19. Yeah, so that would take away 2, and it would have been a draw that shouldn't have happened. So glad that was remembered, because that could be argued being the thing that mattered to give the Birds of Prey a 1917 victory in a match that was pretty bloody on both sides. Not as many templates going down this time, because not as much opportunity to do cold and whatnot. The Mr. Freeze crew was just really focused on controlling the suspect marker game, because they had to be, because they're using neutral cards, and they revolve around suspect marker control, more or less. That Katana, I don't know, that Katana seems bad to me. Overly priced, 75 rep, 100 funding, does not seem like a good enough fighter to warrant that price to me. Maybe using her wrong. She does have the ability to do free efforts if you give up the audacity marker before spending it. That in itself also doesn't seem very good to me. But also, why, she has sharp on her Katana, but she also has precise blow to give you a reroll to the strength die. Granted, it gives you +1 to your attack dice as well, but that just seems like an awkward mix of rolls it's giving her a reroll from 2 different sources, and you can only reroll once. Either way, nice to see the Birds of Prey on the table again. They did well. They managed to take it despite their weirdness in how they play their cards and such. Obviously, Mr. Freeze is at a disadvantage for just having the neutral deck, but with both crews vying for suspect marker control, it actually made it quite an interesting match. Not as much fighting, but a lot of attempts at control. Speaking of which, her Hypnotize was largely unused thanks to her mostly being close to Mr. Freeze for the entire game and him being immune to it. Either way, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please do continue to show your support, and we'll see you next time. Ta-ta for now.